hold up is, but not we're live. Welcome to the Football Insomniac podcast. I'm delighted today to be joined by two fantastic Irishmen here on St Patrick's Day. We've got one from the north, we've got one from the south. It's Stephen from the Endless Celts podcast and a face that you may be familiar with here on the Football Insomniac, Dave Claxon. Guys, how are you doing? And a happy St Paddy's Day to both of you.
I'm doing fantastically well. Thanks for having us on the show. Colin, appreciate it. And nice to meet you, David, as well.
Yeah, same. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody.
We've done well. We've brought the north and the south of Ireland together here on the Football Insomniac.
Don't go down that route.
All the politicians should take a look at this and see what can be done going forward.
Definitely.
It's a nice joke, and it's good to have you both here today. As you can see down the bottom of the screen, we will be discussing the big footballing story here in Scotland this week, which seems to be whether Roy Keane will return to management at Celtic. What we did have someone that was pro Roy Keane coming to Celtic, and we have Stephen here who will put the argument across that Roy Keane shouldn't be the Celtic manager. Unfortunately, the person that we did invite to come on to give his opinion on whether Roy Keane should be the manager was unavailable. So I'll be playing devil's advocate, and Dave will throw a couple of tidbits in here and there as well. And we'll see what kind of reaction we can get out of Stephen. Maybe we'll create a couple of memes along the line. We'll also be taking a look at the news that broke this week that the Colt teams of Celtic and Rangers could be entering the lower leagues of Scottish football as early as next season. Is that a good move for Scottish football? Is it a good move for Celtic and Rangers? We'll discuss that later on. Stephen and David will be giving us their dream football dinner party. You may have heard David's before, so we'll quickly go over that. But Stephen, this is your first time on the podcast, so we'll be interested to see who you've got to bring to the table. And finally, we will be showcasing a brand new podcast here on A State of Mind, hosted by the man to my right as I see it, to my left as you're watching it, is Dave Claxon, and he'll be telling us all about his new podcast that launches on Friday afternoon. But obviously, a big welcome to everyone who's watching us here on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter. Please give us a subscribe on YouTube if you're watching. We're just over 10.4k subscribers, I think it is now, which is fantastic. Obviously, the big game coming up at the weekend in Scotland. If you are wanting to tune in, you will do so on A Celtic State of Mind. We will be live 30 minutes before the game at halftime and afterwards. Be sure to check that out and avoid seeing some pundits you might not be very happy with watching on Sky. Instead, get the Celtic view over at A State of Mind. But first of all, lads, let's go right into the main talking point, and it is Roy Keane. It's a name that just doesn't seem to go away over the last couple of days. He has been doing the games for Sky, but he's also apparently leaked some information to the press that suggests that if the Celtic job was to come up, then he would be interested in doing so. First of all, and Dave, I'll throw it to you first. What was your first thoughts as soon as you heard that news?
I think it's football romanticism gone mad. It's taken to its worst places. I'm Irish. I'm very proud of Roy Keane, what he did as a player. But the facts are, as a manager, like purely manager, not an assistant, he coached 181 games, 70 wins, 69 losses. You're then talking about him coming to Celtic, where you're basically expected to win every game in the league, in the cups. That type of performance is just not going to cut it. It's actually somewhat terrifying if the club was kind of going to go down that route with Keane. He hasn't coached like as a full kind of first team kind of coach since 2009. Game's moved on a hell of a lot since then. And even at Sunderland, he spent a lot of money. Brought in Craig Gordon for 9 million. Didn't really pan out there. And again, Gordon did a great job for us. But that type of spending of money, it's not really what Celtic need. And I think if you look at AXOM over the last couple of months, it's very clear kind of a consensus of what's emerging. We need a Celtic manager who's going to be good at recruitment, who's going to be a lot calmer than Neil Lennon was, and is tactically aware. And if you just look at the facts and look at everything associated with Roy Keane, none of that would probably be present in his character, and that's not really what we need right now.
Yeah, and Stephen, obviously you are on giving us the kind of against Roy Keane side as a Celtic fan. I think you'll be joined by many, I believe, if you take a look at social media. But do you think he actually has the ability to be a coach, just maybe not at Celtic? Could he go and do a manager's job elsewhere?
Well, I want to clear something up first. Last night we done our usual End of Cells podcast, and we got criticised after for basically them saying we attacked Roy Keane, but I didn't see it like that. We were just giving points of why he shouldn't be manager. As David rightly alluded to, it's romantic. It's just a romantic thing for someone to think the Irish connection again, the links to Dermot Desmond, and we all know that he rejected the job, 2014, I believe. So it's just like he's thrown his name out into the hat. And in regards to him being a coach, yes, I can see that. Maybe a number two again, along with someone like Martin O'Neill. But the way I look at it, Roy Keane has been a pundit, and he's a brilliant pundit, to be fair. But he's just not for Celtic. I think it's just another Neil Lennon upgraded name, yes, of course. In world football, he's well renowned, especially over here in Ireland. He's one of the biggest names coming of Ireland in regards to football. But I mean, Celtic State of Mind always allude to it as well. It doesn't matter about the name. We need a coach that can bring the best out of our players. And if the players didn't react to the likes of Lennon shouting or trying to motivate them, they're not going to react to King. He's basically the same. He comes from the same management school. And alluding to his managerial record, his win percentage is under 40%, which for any manager to be considered for an elite job, it shouldn't be happening. It doesn't matter what his name is, where he comes from, what's the connection with Celtic Football Club. In my opinion, it's a no-go. But on the other hand, I can see the people saying, yeah, he bring the motivation, but that might only last a couple of months and it's straight back to where we left this season. The players just won't respond to it. That's my take on it, Colin, at the moment.
So if we take a look at Roy Keane in a bit more detail, Dave, you already alluded to it. He's had 181 games in management, 100 of those at Sunderland, where he did win the championship down there in, I think it was 2006, 2007. And that's obviously a great achievement for a lot of managers. To get out of that league is very difficult. To win it is even harder. He then moves on to Ipswich. He has 81 games at Ipswich, winning 28, drawn 25, lost in 28. Not a great return there at all. And as you said, he's then went on to be a coach alongside Martin O'Neill, first of all in the Republic of Ireland national team between 2013 and 2018. He was also at Villa for a short period of time, and as well not last season now, 2 seasons ago at Nottingham Forest. Now, when you take a look at his playing accolades, I mean, 7 Premier Leagues, a Champions League, and he's in the top 100 list released by FIFA of the greatest players of all time. You just can't deny that on the park, he was a fantastic leader, he was a fantastic player, and he gave everything for the team. Now, Stephen, the point you made there is it kind of goes with the fact that his demeanour comes across that he is very vocal. He kind of shouts at his players to try and get the best out of them. It's the sort of old school approach that what you've seen from Sir Alex, what you've seen from managers like Martin O'Neill, who he worked alongside, was trying to get the best out of the players, not by using specific techniques, but just by getting in their face, just trying to get 100% out of them. The fear factor really is what got the best out of those players. Now, I think that time has moved on. I don't think you see that many managers nowadays who are successful by adopting those fear tactics. But going on the flip side of that, he's been out of the job now for 10 years. He's been watching a lot of coaches. He has went and studied, I believe, at New York Red Bulls? I believe he went to study there for a couple of months. Is there a chance that he's perhaps developed more of a coaching side that we've just not seen yet, because he has only been a number 2? Maybe he could have picked up some of these skills, that he just needs that chance, and maybe the Celtic job is that chance to show he can be a good manager.
I think No, go on, Stephen.
I mean, well, Colin, you say about the coaching side of things, he could have picked up tips, but what gives him the right to get his first chance again, the first crack, so to speak, at Celtic Football Club? We need to have a manager who's proven, who can get the best out of the players we have, because, I mean, the rebuild is going to be massive. There's a potential list of 18 players are going to be leaving, including all the loanees and the squad players. So that again, it's going to be a massive job, and we can't take a punt on somebody who hasn't been in management in over 10 years. Granted, yes, he can learn, he can go and learn his trade again, but I just don't believe that Celtic should be his first crack back at a job. That just shows other managers who've actually tried and gained the respect within the management world, that them jobs come up, it's because they're going to go to players who are famous in the world football. I don't know what you think about that, David.
Yeah, I think it's you have to look at it from the club's perspective. It would be so risky for them to give the kind of keys to Celtic Park to Roy Keane and a budget. You kind of look at his second book. He said one of his biggest failings at Ipswich was recruitment. You look at his entire managerial career. He spent over £100 million on transfers on 125 players. And he only coached 2 teams for nearly 3 or 4 seasons.
Yep,
at Sunderland alone, he signed 38 players. So again, you go back to the situation that we're in and what Stephen said. We're looking at a club that is in complete rebuild mode. We could be staring down the fact of next season, we might not win the league and we might still be rebuilding a year into the new manager in that role. And is Roy Keane, with the temperament he has shown to date, the right man for the job? I can't see it. You even look at more recently, you talk about he's gone to New York. He's trying to upskill himself in terms of being a manager. Even more recently at Ireland, the kind of hubbub with Harry Arter about faking injury.
Yep.
That's really concerning stuff. You're kicking off with players who, and again, go back to the mindset of a player in this day and age. Most of these guys play club football. That's where they earn their bread. International football is an add-on. So you're basically giving out to a player who's taken his time to play for Ireland. It doesn't look good. You even look at what Matt Doherty said when he left. He couldn't actually explain Keane's role in the Irish setup. Again, that's very, very concerning. So again, I think you go back to what we're looking for the next Celtic manager, and Keane just doesn't tick the boxes. Does he deserve a job outside Celtic? Maybe. If a team and his ambition is at the right level and he's willing to kind of learn from the mistakes he admitted he made and kind of build himself back up. But there's no way he would get the Celtic job now, given what has come before.
Yeah. And a big welcome to everyone who's watching us on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter and Periscope. Just bringing this comment up for anyone that joined a bit late. Brian Conway, 60, you may have done so. Colin, you're clutching at straws. I'm not clutching at straws here. What I'm doing is I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. Both guys are against Roy Keane taking the job. I'm throwing some potential kind of bombshells out there to see what the guys would think. We did invite someone on who was pro Roy Keane to take the Celtic job, but he couldn't be on the show today. So I'm playing that devil's advocate role. So if I give my personal opinion now, although this isn't a Celtic podcast, I would say Roy Keane is not the man for the Celtic job. But what we are going to look at is what could he do for Scottish football if he was to become the Celtic manager. Now, you've seen the attraction to the league that has been gained because Steven Gerrard took the Rangers job. I mean, you see all these pundits that are now suddenly taking an interest in Scottish football. Sky have been completely all over it. If you have that next season where it's Gerrard versus Keane, what does that do to the Scottish game? Surely, Stephen, it just ups it to that next level. You'll see coverage from all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, Colin. I understand what you're saying in terms of Roy Keane versus Gerrard. I mean, that's a box office. That's something you would get in the prime years of the English Premier League when they were playing. But a part of me doesn't like the fact that the English Premier League see us as like a playground for ex-players or a playground for managers trying to make their name. It shouldn't be like that. Celtic is its own club in its own right. One of the biggest football names in world football, one of the big supporters base in world football. We can't be treated like a playground for ex-pundits or managers who have a big name to come up and ply their trade, so to speak. But yes, in regards to the Roy Keane and Gerrard, 100% agree with you, Colin. The name of Scottish football will be out there, yeah, and there'll be loads of people watching. You can almost guarantee there'll be people from like world countries and coming in to tune in to watch these matches. But I'm really passionate about Celtic being their own club and their own identity, because we've seen it for the years. Former English Premier League players come up and they think it's going to be easy. They think they're going to see out the rest of their career and have a blast, but it doesn't go like that in the majority of it anyway. I just can't bring myself for any argument for Roy Keane to be the manager. I really can't, and it's me trying to scrape at the bottom of what I'm thinking. I can understand the box office element, but I go back to the whole thing again. I want the Scottish League to be their own league in their own right. We all know that it's not the best league in the world, but we love it. It's our league. It's where our team plays, and the sooner the better that everyone kind of leaves the English Premier League in the distance and stops comparing it to that. It's going to be better and more beneficial to the clubs in the SPFL. And for me, Colin, just Roy Keane's a no-go, David. I don't know what you think about the box office thing, but what do you think on that?
I think actually Yeah.
Oh, sorry, David. Just before you start on that, just to let everyone know, you have a background in PR. So, I mean, if you got given this opportunity to promote the Scottish League with Keane versus Gerrard, Liverpool versus Man United, that must be a dream for any PR sort of team.
100%. I mean, the storylines write themselves, and the way Keane kind of goes on, even in terms of his interviews with media. The famous one where a journalist's mobile phone went off, and he just kind of gave the 1,000-yard death stare. Stuff like that, goes viral in this day and age. And I think it hits upon what something Stephen said there. It's not even just in Scotland where this is happening. You look at Frank Lampard's time at Derby. You watch any Derby game, it was Frank Lampard's Derby. We're talking about one of the most established teams over 100 years in the UK, and they're just demoted to being Frank Lampard's team. And again, you look at it from a pure communications aspect. It's a way to sell it. It's a way to get people to tune into a Derby game. It's the same for Gerrard, and it will be the same for Celtic. So I have no doubt if Roy Keane kind of took over at Celtic, there will be, in the initial phase, a huge awareness, absolutely ginormous, nearly like Martin O'Neill. But you then have to couple that with success. No one wants to watch a losing team, particularly if you go to the Irish situation. And what I would always feel, and Stephen, feel free to jump in Ireland as a pure Celtic fan, we are nearly fighting for relevancy because all of our friends support Liverpool, support Man City. They are obsessed with the Premier League. And that has really happened over my lifetime, where when I was growing up, there were people who supported just Celtic, but the Premier League is so all-encompassing. It is on a global scale that as a Celtic fan, most of your friends support a second team. So if Roy Keane did come in, undoubtedly your friends would be, whoa, this is amazing. Like, I'm going to watch Celtic games. But then there'll be a drop-off because they don't want to watch Celtic play Ross County. They just want to be there for the glory moments. And that's fine. Listen, from a brand perspective for the club, if they buy jerseys, if they tune into our games, that's great for us, 100%. We want as many people feeling positive about Glasgow Celtic as possible. But the simple fact is, if Keane can't back up that box office kind of name, there will be a drop-off. It's like anything.
Yeah, I think as well, you're 100% correct there, David. When I say to my friends, I only support Celtic Football Club, they can't grasp it. As you said, the English Premier League now, so it's so dominant in world football. I mean, you go anywhere in the world, there's posters about it, there's news about it, there's advertisements about it, and it becomes a bit diluted, especially the other leagues, and the SPFL has just been left behind in the distance. That's why I'm so against the whole English Premier League using us as a playground for ex-players to go against each other. And as you quite rightly said, it was Frank Lampard's Derby. That's the whole. That was the whole narrative about it. And I don't want to be Roy Keane Celtic. Celtic or Celtic, and that's the way it always should be.
Yeah, it's a great point, Stephen. I'm just going back to what you were saying there, David, and just to follow up on it. You're talking about potentially like the Irish fans who have fell in love with the English Premier League, then starting to take a look at Celtic. Do you think that could also be the case for some players as well? I'm not talking about Irish players, I'm just talking about players in general. Players who idolised guys like Roy Keane growing up and getting the chance to go and work alongside them and play for them. Do you think that could encourage some players to Celtic Park?
I think, flip it on its head, look at Gerrard. Gerrard obviously, kicked off his managerial career at Rangers, and he's built something there where someone like Joe Aribo came from Charlton, and he saw a path with Steven Gerrard because it looked like Gerrard was getting, year on year, the team was somewhat improving. In Europe, you couldn't deny the performances. And you look at someone like that, he saw a path to winning trophies, to playing in Europe. And that's what Celtic and Rangers uniquely can offer to players like that. And the thing is, there's too much baggage with Keane. That's the major difference between him and Gerrard. You look at all the falling outs he has had, Harry Arthur, the comments from Matt Doherty, all the massive blow-ups at Sunderland, the same at Ipswich. You compare the two, and it's like, again, you go back to that central fact. These guys have no emotional attachment to Celtic. So it's their career they're looking at purely. They want to win trophies, they want to play in Europe. Who offers them the best path to do that? Well, obviously right now, Rangers do, because they won the league. They look in far better shape than we do. we're in a rebuild phase. So I can see the attraction, but players aren't fools. They want to know where their career is going in a couple of years' time. And Gerrard offers, at this moment in time, the best path to be successful.
Yeah, and I'm just going to bring this point up, from Maravchik25, who says, Brand Gerrard attracts players. Mick Beale is the football brains. Now, referring to Michael Beale, who is the coach at Rangers, you've also got guys there like Gary McAllister, and they've got a fantastic kind of football headhunter who goes out and scouts these players for them. Stephen, I'll throw that one out to you. Imagine Roy Keane does get the job. He would have to have a coaching staff similar to what Gerrard has at Rangers to be any sort of success at Celtic, wouldn't he? You'd need to get the recruitment right.
Yeah, but I agree with what David was saying. Yes, you can idolise a player and want to play for him, but when you look at his track record, all the falling outs he's had, that points to one thing. He doesn't like anyone undermining him or going against him. Any player who would do that would be punished probably, and they'll fall out, and there's a conflict already within the club. Regarding the coaching staff, do you really think Roy Keane would be comfortable with people being the tactical brains in front of him? He would want to be head and centre, making the decisions on players. I don't think he'd be comfortable with that kind of setup. And the whole director of football thing, I don't think that would suit Roy Keane because he's his own man. You've seen it over the years. He goes against the trend, so to speak. If he got the job, David's right. You would see an influx of positivity for about 2 or 3 months, and then it'll drop off. Players will start to realise this is just what we had before. As I said before, Colin, it's just an upgraded name within world football. And if you look at Gerrard to me, he's not really on the sidelines. He's not really a shouter. Yes, sometimes he would get up and motivate his team. But Michael Beale is publicly known for many ex-Rangers players that played onto that management team that he's the brains. But for me, Gerrard's happy with that. He's happy with just being like the figurehead and letting the coaching staff do the job, so to speak. But Roy Keane, for me, Colin, I don't think he'd be happy with someone making decisions over him.
Yeah, I think that would be the case. I mean, you've seen he's always struggled, I think, with figures of authority. The only person that was really able to command Roy Keane was Sir Alex Ferguson. And even at times between them, the relationship was rocky. So you come in, you've now bringing in a new chief executive at Celtic with Dominic Mackay coming in. Potentially the club are looking at bringing in a new director of football, then throwing Roy Keane into that mix. I think it's just got the potential to explode, and it's not the way that Celtic fans would want it to explode. I'm sure other teams across Scotland would love to see that happening because it would be a media dream for a lot of people. But yeah, I mean, if you're a Celtic fan, you don't really need that. Not after what's happened this season, not after what's happened over the last 12 months. Celtic have regressed to the point of probably before Neil Lennon first took over. If you look at the performances this season, this was like a Mowbray team, the way that things ended up. And you want to rebuild and start putting those blocks together. I feel as if Roy Keane, if he was to come in, could just completely damage what's left of the foundations there. And some people will see that as a good thing because it's a rebirth. And others will say, well, I don't want to be waiting 3 or 4 seasons before Celtic get back to the level that we know that they should be at. So, I mean, Roy Keane, there's obviously other names that's now came out over the last couple of days, and we'll be discussing that on the Celtic State of Mind bulletin at 12:30, including the comments today from Jesse Marsh, the Red Bull Salzburg manager. That was a really interesting interview. So we'll be discussing more about that. But a point I brought up earlier, and I just want to throw it out to you guys, there is another opening in Scottish football. And someone brought this up earlier in the comments, and I can't scroll through to find it, but the Aberdeen job is open. Is Roy Keane a good enough manager to even take over at Aberdeen? I'll throw it at you first, Stephen.
I was actually, I was thinking about that. I genuinely was that, go back to Keane, if he has to build himself back up, why not a job like Aberdeen, or if there was another job like Motherwell, or one of those type of jobs where he can come in, play it old school if he wants, give the team a real kick in and just get them performing. And he can build his reputation back from there. Aberdeen, maybe because of what came before with McInnes, he's a very stable kind of manager there. He was there for years. He kind of built something good there, and then it kind of went off the boil. Maybe not that job, but another job within Scotland, I think, is realistic for Roy Keane if he wants to build up from there.
Yeah, Stephen, Keane to Aberdeen, do you think he'd be interested?
Well, the way I look at Aberdeen's squad, I think they'll be more receptible to a manager like Keane. You wouldn't really say there's any divas in Aberdeen's squad. They're all the tough guys. You look at them on the pitch, they're tall, do you know what I mean? They're physical. I think maybe they would respond more to a manager like that, a man manager, to someone to give them the kick up the bum, so to speak. But if any team wants Keane, they can take him, as long as it's not Celtic Football Club. That's what I'm putting out there. If any club wants to take him on, fair play. Aberdeen might be a destination where he can rebuild himself, or even the lower leagues of England. That could be a possibility. But Aberdeen, yeah, I would say, why not? The players seem to be. Derek McKenna's probably man manager too, isn't he? He would be, and then you have your man Tony Docherty beside him. But I think Keane maybe for Aberdeen, yeah, that would be a good shout, Colin. I actually didn't even think about that myself, but yeah, that's a good shout.
I mean, my friends who run the Red Tinted Glasses Aberdeen podcast, they managed to get one of their friends on Sky Bet in as far as 7-1 to be the Aberdeen manager. Someone that wasn't even a coach, he wasn't even a manager. They got him in at 7-1. So, I mean, we're going to put that out here and let's see where Keane ends up for the Aberdeen job at the end of today. I want him closer than 7-1, so get your bets in for Keane for Aberdeen. And then him and Micah Richards up at Pittodrie on a wet Wednesday night against Ross County. I mean, that's better than watching them doing some punditry for Sky Sports at the weekend.
That's box office now.
Yeah, I like that.
I mean, let's be honest, Keane is a fantastic pundit and he was a fantastic player. But not all great players become great coaches. And I think this is just this, as you were saying earlier, Dave, it's this sort of romanticism to get Keane to be the fantastic manager, and he's Alex Ferguson's boy. He's been brought through. He's had the guidance of Martin O'Neill, but sometimes you just got to put your hands up and say he can't do it. And I think this is the case here with Keane.
Yeah, totally. I think it's excuse like the bad pun, but Roy of the Rovers again gone mad. It's just what Celtic fan wouldn't love to see Roy Keane win a championship, to make Celtic successful in Europe, and to win at Ibrox and all that. It is, the things dreams are made of. But again, you go back to the facts of where the club is, where Roy Keane is, it just doesn't match up. And that's unfortunately the situation, and that's just the way it goes.
Stephen, I'm going to bring this one up and see what your thoughts are on this. Shuxler says, Lennon for Aberdeen. What would you make of that? Neil Lennon up in the Aberdeen job.
Like, I'm not laughing to be disrespectful, but that just took me by surprise there. I think Lenny, I mean, he said he wants to get back into football. I think he said that in 5 Live when he did the commentary in the Champions League game for Manchester United. And yeah, you can see that. I mean, what about a Lenny, Micah Richards and Roy Keane dream team? I never know. But yes, I want Neil Lennon to do well. I do. I've said that on my podcast. It was nothing disrespectful towards the fella. He's a legend for Celtic Football Club. He always will be in my eyes. It was just unfortunate it had ended. It should have ended sooner. We all know that. But it did end, and hopefully we get a fresh start. I wish Neil Lennon well, and if he gets the Aberdeen job, fair play to him. I think that would be a good platform for him. He's managed Hibs in the Scottish League, and he done quite well up until the end anyway, when he got let go by Leon Dempster. But I can see that happening. I also touched upon Aberdeen. You've seen the rumour about Scott Brown going as assistant. I think that's died down now. I think that's gone. I think that was just paper talk. But Roy Keane, Micah Richards, that would be a good partnership. You look around Micah Richards doing TikToks on the side of the pitch, that would be quite funny. And then you have Roy Keane there. But yeah, either two of them, I think Aberdeen would do quite well to get them. Also, as well, as you pointed out before, players who want to play up there, they could offer them a good wage. And their objective every year is to try and win a cup and finish third. So I think that would be manageable, yeah.
So I'm just going to leave this on one last question on Roy Keane. And I'm looking for fans of other teams that watch. Like, we've had a couple of Manchester United fans that have watched before, some fans of the English Premier League that do watch the show. So I'm going to put it to you. Roy Keane gets the Celtic job. Mm-hmm. What is the impact on the season ticket renewals this summer? Stephen, you first.
I think David's right. There will be an influx, no doubt about it. The name itself speaks. Roy Keane's a world-renowned name in football. But in terms of season tickets, there's a lot of fans that say they wouldn't renew. But at the end of the day, the addiction, it's an addiction. It's a way of life to Celtic. Most of them will renew anyway, regardless of who it is. I don't think 90% of the fans want Roy Keane. That's obvious, and I hope the Celtic board listen and Desmond doesn't start pulling the Irish connection strings, so to speak. But the season ticket renewals for me, they will still be steady enough. I'm not going to say they're going to drop through the floor unless we get John Kennedy in. That would be the worst decision they could make at 100%. But Yeah, I think David's right in what he earlier said. There will be an influx of other supporters of other teams getting interested and therefore kind of boosting ticket sales and stuff, but that'll die off, and it'll die off over a period of probably 3 to 4 months when people realise it's just the norm of last season. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And David, obviously we've been starved of football for the last it'll probably be close to 18 months by the time the stadiums open back up. Would a name like Roy Keane attract season ticket renewals at Celtic?
Yeah, I think you might get the initial kind of boost. And the thing is, the way this season has gone, Celtic fans have a very kind of defined thinking, like the majority of Celtic fans, of what they want from the next manager. And while Keane with the profile and everything, the Irish connection, you might get more fans coming over from Ireland for the games as well. So maybe not in terms of pure kind of season tickets. You might get more kind of fair weather fans, if you want to call them that, at the games. Fine. I think you'd probably get the usual people renewing, but then there'd still be a huge degree of unhappiness. Again, he's basically Neil Lennon Mark II, just his kind of characteristics. Same problems would rear their head. And then you're looking at a season again when people maybe might be back in the stadiums, and you're coming time to renew. You've had Neil Lennon this season, we've all endured. Roy Keane, probably not going to be a great season. And then you're asking people to renew again, and the club could be in an even bigger mess. And that's when it's kind of, that's a very critical phase when maybe people who would normally renew wouldn't.
I mean, it will definitely be an interesting one to look at over the summer period. Personally, I don't think Roy Keane will become a manager again. I think when you take a look at the wages he's probably on at Sky, the job that he gets to do, he gets to go around and give his opinion, and basically nobody's able to give him a sort of retort to it. I mean, you'll see it on social media, but I don't even think he's on any other social media platforms, to be honest with you. So he believes everything he says is gospel, and you've seen the arguments he's had with all the different pundits, and it's a cushy number. I mean, why would you give that up to maybe, as we were just saying, end up at Dingwall on a wet Wednesday night when he could be in the warmth of a studio at Old Trafford or at Anfield? So I think the Roy Keane thing, you're always going to have that connection with former Celtic players and Celtic fans when the Celtic job is open. I'm sure it's the same for every other team. You see it when potentially Klopp was in trouble there at Liverpool, that Gerrard's name get thrown in, and I think even Rangers fans will admit that Gerrard's not ready to take that Liverpool job right now. So, David, you're saying there's a sort of romanticism about it when the job comes up. It's time for the boyhood fan to come home. But no, I don't think this one will be a runner. But you know what happens? The name gets put in the press, and then we end up doing podcasts like this that end up talking about it. So the people that are selling the newspapers have certainly done their job. And we've seen, I'm looking at the comments, and most of them, I'd say, for the Celtic fans are probably 95% against Keane coming in. There's the odd one or two that would be wanting Roy Keane as manager, but I don't think that ship will come to sail. So we're going to move on to our next topic today. And it is an interesting story that came out on the BBC yesterday. So basically, for anyone that isn't aware, there is a vote taking place next month. And that vote will be to extend League Two in Scotland to include both the Colt teams of Celtic and Rangers, as well as 2 teams from the Highland League and 2 teams from the Lowland League, to make up a 16-team league in the lowest league in Scottish professional football. The maximum age for these Colt teams will be 21 years old, and they're not allowed promotion past League One. So it's very similar to the model that's adapted in Spain, where you see Real Madrid and Barcelona, I think Sevilla and Atletico, also have their B teams in the lower leagues. They will not be able to compete in the League or the Scottish Cup, but they can play in the Challenge Cup. And Celtic and Rangers, who will no doubt finish first and second in Scotland for the next 5 years, unless something miraculous happens, are foregoing £290,000 of their prize money each season to fund this for 5 years. It's a 5-year project to include these Colt teams in the bottom league of Scottish football. Stephen, I'll throw it to you first. As a Celtic fan, would you be excited to see the likes of the Celtic Colts maybe going to Stenhousemuir on a Saturday? Would you go to that if Celtic weren't playing at Celtic Park?
Well, to be honest with you, Colin, I'm a big supporter of the Youth Academy. I think it's been lost over recent years, and I made the point last night in our End of Cells podcast that the Youth Academy, when the Reserve League was scrapped, has just kind of been left in limbo. And you look at through the years, like some Maloney, Ian McGeady, like through the Reserve League, it didn't do no harm. So any competitive football for the Colts would be a welcome addition, because then you can maybe see players progressing. I think the lower leagues in Scotland are a perfect way to apply your trade. In regards to going to certain teams like Stenhousemuir, Alloa, whoever it is at the time, yeah, I think fans would go. Me personally, be a bit difficult because I'm over in Belfast. But yeah, if I lived there, I'd go because I'm interested in them. I want to see the likes of Armstrong, Ogoflex, Carmoko Dembele, and unfortunately, these guys are going to be leaving. Well, seem to be leaving anyway, and that's unfortunate. The youth academy has been forgotten. And yes, we can point to the likes of McGregor, Tierney, Forrest, for example, but they're like the earlier years of the 2010, 2011 coming through. Recent years, there's been basically nothing coming through, and that's quite disappointing for a club like Celtic. Bar Stephen Welsh, who got his chance by luck, and we all know that, and he's done well. And I hope he stays with him, especially next season. I think he's going to be important going forward. But in regards to the lower leagues, I think it's a great idea just to get competitive football, and as well, it will boost revenue in the lower leagues for clubs, and that can boost their facilities, boost their training grounds. So it's a welcome addition from my point of view, yeah.
Yeah, David, just on that last point that Stephen was making about boosting the revenue, obviously we've seen the proposal that each team would get at least £20,000 extra, but do you think that could drive for a lower league television deal? Because you know there'd be fans of Celtic and Rangers that would want to see their Colt teams playing in these games and see how they're progressing. And at the minute, there's no TV deal for the lower leagues. Surely someone like BT, Sky, even Premier Sports would be interested in picking that one up.
Yeah, definitely. And it could even be, if there was no interest from broadcasters like that, it could be Rangers and Celtic bolting it on to Celtic TV and paying more money for it. And that would make sense because, again, you think of where we are now in terms of the digital era, it's all about content. And, you know, a live game, Celtic playing Stenhousemuir, you will get fans tuning in because they want to see who the next kind of superstar coming through in the Celtic team will be. So even if that interest from a BT wasn't there, the club can definitely pick it up. It won't be that expensive. I think it's a win-win for everyone. I think it provides a path for players to be developed. It works in other far more established kind of football countries. If you want to say that, Germany, Spain, even in Croatia, which is an interesting kind of idea. If you're looking at Scotland in terms of population and Croatia, you look at the players that have been developed in Croatia, in incredible quality. But again, if you can just create a pipeline or a pathway for players to develop, that's great for the clubs, obviously. But say Stenhousemuir make more money from broadcasting rights, maybe more fans, as you said, with Celtic fans going to the games as well. I think it's a win-win for everyone, and it probably should have been done or thought about a while ago.
Yep. It's an interesting one for me because the discussion is that this would start next season. So it's not as if this is 2 or 3 years down the line. This is next season we're talking about. And that kicks off in only a matter of months. So if we're able to process this through for next season, I think it's massive in terms of Scottish football. Having a 16-team lower league, although it adds more teams to the professional setup, you also see that a lot of these teams in the Lowland League and the Highland League are heavily investing money into their setup so that they are ready to make that move up as well. We take a look at teams like Kelty Hearts. Barry Ferguson's a manager. They're getting guys that were in the Championship last season to play for them. Brora Rangers, they've been knocking on the door of getting promoted to the League Two now for a couple of seasons. I think that can only benefit Scottish football. And then you take a look as what we were saying, Stephen, about Stephen Welsh. Stephen Welsh went on loan to Morton, and he played, I think it was a dozen or so games. My Morton fan friends will be annoyed that I don't know that stat off by heart, probably. But he then comes in and only plays a handful of games for Celtic, so his development isn't quite at that level. But if you take a look at them, if they're going down to the likes of League One and League Two to play teams like Queen's Park, like Cove Rangers, even like Brecon, that is that gap filled between development football and first team football, because you're actually playing against guys that have been playing football now for a number of years and will know all the tricks of the trade. And I think that can only be good for these youngsters and hopefully help their development between the development team and the first team, and you start seeing more players come through, because for the last couple of seasons, Stephen, that's really not been the case across both Celtic and Rangers.
I think it's quite vital, Colin, in years, especially during this rebuild, that the youth academy is on sync with the first team in terms of tactics, formations, the way they're coached, because you see the likes of Ajax, Barcelona, their youth teams are drilled right through, and there's a pathway. It seems like you get to the developmental squad at Celtic and you're kind of just left there, and you get your chance by luck, you'll stay in like Stephen Welsh has done. That wasn't the pathway for him. Celtic had to resort to that because our defence was injured and Shane Duffy, people like that, didn't perform. He came in and he's done well. Fair play to the fella. He's a good young defender. In regards to the teams in the lower leagues, look at teams like Edinburgh City, East Kilbride. They are pumping money into their squads and their facilities. They want to make something of themselves. And granted, it's under 21s coming into their leagues, but these players will be good enough for that league and they'll add a competitive edge to it as well. You look at the comments that I heard Marvin Bartley said about Celtic's youth players when he played against them for Livingston. He was surprised by the lack of quality. That strikes me because what's going on in the coaching pits? I know there's Stephen McManus and people like that doing it, but sometimes there needs to be a clear pathway from youth right through to the first team. Because when you go into the first team and they're playing totally different tactics and coaching styles to what you're used to, you're going to be in the deep end and you're not going to make it. And the lower leagues, for me, yes, but as long as it's fine-tuned with the first team of Celtic Football Club, as long as it's the same kind of way we're playing, the same formations, the same ideas, which is vitally important for the director of football to get correct and the management team, because going forward, as the Brexit comes into play, the transfer market we're going to be fishing in is going to be low in terms of what we can afford. So the youth academy need to be on point.
Yeah, and Dave, I mean, you take a look at it, across Scottish football, a lot of the talent that we see across the teams all come from Celtic and Rangers. They bring them through their youth academies. There's obviously some of the bigger names that have went on to make a fantastic career for themselves, guys like Billy Gilmore. You see the German teams coming in and taking players from Celtic. We even look at the players that's coming through right now at Rangers. There's Nathan Patterson at right back. They've also got Dapo and Budi up front. Celtic have brought through guys like Kieran Tierney over the last couple of years. You see it even now with Karamoko Dembele. Although he's not been given a chance, he's always been touted as that next big thing. Scott Robertson at loan down south. You think that even if these players are then playing at a League One and League Two level, if they don't make that step up to play for the first team, they'll have that experience against playing teams like Queen's Park, and they suddenly become an option for these teams and an option to help develop their careers and make sure that once they get let go from Celtic and Rangers, that's not where their football journey ends.
Yeah, for sure. I think the thing that kind of strikes me about Celtic and Rangers at the youth level right now is the players haven't even been tested. You know, they're playing glorified reserve games, friendlies nearly half the time. The players haven't been really battle tested. So how can you expect them then to step up to the first team if they haven't really played at any decent level? And the other thing to say is a benefit could be for Celtic and Rangers that by these games being televised, by them playing these teams, they might spot a player, they might spot a prospect and bring him into the fold. Yeah, so again, you know, there's a lot of benefits there from kind of progressing players on. And again, you could have maybe a kind of 16-year-old player, 17-year-old player play 2 seasons at that level, and then you loan them out to Kilmarnock, and the player progresses on. And then finally, 3 years of proper football, they're ready to come back and try at Celtic. You've at least assessed properly what the player is capable of. At this moment in time, we're not able to assess these players at all. As Stephen said, young Welsh came through. It was more luck than anything else. There was no plan behind that. That's what we, Celtic, Rangers, and loads of other clubs need to get better at. There has to be a path for these players to develop and then to bring them into the first team. If they don't make it, that's fine. But if they're not even tested or they're not even given the pathway to improve, how can they make that step up? It's just not realistic.
Yeah, and this is a topic we're actually also going to be discussing on a Celtic State of Mind at 12:30 when I'm joined by Amy Canavan. And Amy actually works behind the scenes at Bonnyrigg Rose. So I'll be interested to see the input from the lower league teams to the point of maybe Celtic and Rangers Colts just being thrown in at League Two instead of having to go through that system. But I want to bring this point up by Charles Sweeney, who says, I don't think you can just have a rule for just Celtic and Rangers. What if Aberdeen want a Colts team? Now, I think that's a great point. Surely there is better, or I say better, equal strength youth academies that's coming through. You take a look at Hamilton, who they've brought through. I think they actually ended up playing in the Europa Youth League as well because they'd won the Reserve League. It's not just Celtic and Rangers that are bringing through these talents. Could teams like Aberdeen, Motherwell, Hibs, Hearts, could this be the first step to maybe introducing them into the lower leagues as well? Stephen, I'll start with yourself.
Well, as touching upon in terms of the 16-team expansion in League Two, I think the SPFL should be a bigger league, but I know that's a discussion for another podcast. In regards to the Colts, this could be another example. If every team wants to start a cult team, why don't they do a Colts league? Therefore, they're not affecting the League Two. But if it's only a select amount of football clubs in the SPFL that want to do cult teams, try and include them in the setup, expand the league at the 18 teams. I mean, I think you're correct. Hamilton and Aberdeen have great youth academies. Hamilton bring players through every year simply because they can't afford to sign players off their own bat. They bring through some fantastic players. A young centre back Hamilton at the minute, he seems to be the next one coming up. So I think there is scope for them teams to have a Colts team. But on the other side of it, a lot of teams folded their reserve football because they couldn't afford to keep it on. So you don't know how many teams are going to be up for that. The likes of Aberdeen probably, maybe Hibs, yeah. And another thing, to touch upon the Celtic season past the Paradise, people talk about added value. Why don't they include, as David rightly said, the Colts team in that? So next season, put that on the package, and people might like that. I know I certainly would. I think, as you rightly said, David, people want to see the next superstar. They want to see the next Kieran Tierney. They want to see the next McGeady, who's on the wings taking players on. That's what excites me as a fan. I want to see the youth players. But yeah, I think you're correct. I think teams like Aberdeen and Hamilton, they should be given an option, definitely.
Yeah, and David, I think this is a first step, and we'll probably see this expand as the years go on.
Yeah, I think so. And what you said about Aberdeen, Hibs, I think if the money's there and the club wants to do it, say in the top division, why not? You got to look at what the benefits are. I can't really see many negatives to this. You're creating a pathway for players to develop all across Scotland. That's a really good thing. You could have a future superstar for the Scottish national team, kind of kicking off his career at that level. So why not? If the clubs want to do it, the money's there, they should be able to do it, and I think it'll be a benefit to the Scottish game overall.
Yeah, and it's definitely one to keep an eye out for, because the vote will take place next month. If it's implemented for next season, I think it will be a big success. And it looks as if both Celtic and Rangers are going to fund it for 5 seasons. So we'll be able to see how that goes over the next 5 years. Maybe after that, Aberdeen, Hibs, Hearts, they'll all look to do that, and it'll probably require a full restructure of the league set up in Scotland. So I think it'll be good, but we'll have to see how it goes over the next couple of years. So yeah, a big welcome to everyone who's joining us on the Football Insomniac. There'll probably be a lot of people watching for the first time, thanks to probably Stephen joining us here from Endless Celts. And David, you've been on before and we've had this discussion. And for anyone that's watching for the first time, I always like to ask my guests quite an interesting question. And you find out a lot about your guests by asking this one. And it is the topic of the dream football dinner party. Now, Dave, when you were on a couple of months ago, you told us the 4 people that you would have over to your house. Just for anyone who's watching and doesn't know Dave is actually over in the United States of America right now. There's probably less restrictions over there than what there is here in the UK and Ireland. So you could have these people over probably right now. Remind us
that's it.
Who is the 4 people from the world of football, either dead or alive, that you would have at yours, because we are bringing them back for 24 hours only?
Yeah, for sure. My guys previously, and I haven't changed my mind on this, Maradona, it's probably on everyone's list. Eamon Dunphy, the famous Irish pundit, a bit of a Keane type temperament. Wim Janssen, obviously for what he did for Celtic, and then Jean-Marc Bosman, because of his impact on the world of football. And
remind me, what is it that you were cooking?
I think I was actually getting a takeaway because I was really lazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the best idea. As I said, I always go back to Ewan Boyle, who was the former Morton social media manager, and he was cooking cheese toasties. So that was the bar, and everything above cheese toasties was a win. And he knows that as well. He always ribs me for it. So, Stephen, this is your first time on the show. Who is coming over to the Tomlinson household for the dinner party? And most importantly, what's on the table for them to eat?
Right, I'll start with what's on the table. I'm not a good cook, so a couple of pop noodles, some toast. I mean, they can fire on.
Well, I think Ewan's now got a bit of a competition here for the most interesting food selection.
But they can choose what pop noodle. I mean, there's different kinds out there. That's very exciting.
That's it then.
For me, My first guess would be Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I think that guy's just immense. He's come back to the Sweden squad. His announcement was God has returned. So that guy speaks for itself. I'm going to go for Bertie Auld. I think his stories would be fantastic, and he's funny. I've spoken to him a few times when I've been over at Celtic Park, so he's always a good laugh. Diego Maradona's on my list, as you rightly said. David, he's on everybody's list. The guy was just a football enigma. He's fantastic, probably one of the best footballers that ever lived. He is one of the best footballers that ever lived. And my last one's Paolo Di Canio. I don't think he would be happy enough with me putting pot noodles, but I'll give him an Italian option, maybe a microwave lasagna. But yeah, it's just for his passion, his fire. I think it'd be interesting to hear his stories. I've heard a lot of people speak about him on different podcasts. I think it'd be very exciting to have him. So yeah, that's my 4 for my dream football dinner party.
I mean, it's a really interesting selection. You go from the Lisbon Lion of Betty Auld through to the almost enigma, you could say, of Paolo Di Canio, throwing in a bit of Maradona in there as well. It's a great selection. What were you thinking about when you were picking your 4 to come over? What was the idea? Because obviously you've got to try and picture this being a real thing. Yeah. You've actually got to picture them coming to your house. Do you think they would all go on?
I think there's different personalities in there. I think Bertie Auld, he'd be the story man. The other guys that listen, Di Canio would come in with his usual, his passion, his words that he says sometimes that are off the cuff. Diego telling his football stories, and Zlatan just being Zlatan. He'd probably just sit there and say nothing and tweet later on that he came and he made it. So yeah, that's the way I'm looking at that.
And yeah, you just mentioned as well Zlatan Ibrahimovic coming back into the international setup. I mean, he's 39 years old. How long can he play for? I mean, coming back, and when you get to the sort of age of 32, a lot of players say, right, my international career's over. No one really comes back at the age of 39 to play for the country, do they?
Well, it's Zlatan, isn't it? I think he just decides when he wants to turn up. He just knocks on the training ground door and he's in anyway. I think their strikers. I had a wee notice. There's only a couple. Alexander Isaac, he's a young striker coming through. He's going to be a good one by the looks of it. And then you have Marcus Berg. I think Celtic fans know him from playing him a few times. So I think him coming back in isn't really a surprise. If he makes himself available, any team's going to take him. He's been fantastic this season in Serie A for AC Milan, so I don't see no reason why not. And in terms of how long he can keep playing, whenever he wants to quit, really, that's up to him.
David, 16 goals in 21 games for Milan this season. He retired after Euro 2016. He just feels as if he could go on forever, doesn't he?
Oh, totally. He said about his time in America, it was a total waste of time. Like that he should have been playing at a higher level. And I mean, you can't deny what he's done this season for AC Milan. Second in the table, he's been a key part of that. So I mean, the guy is timeless. And if you're talking about maybe if he wanted one last season when maybe the legs were getting, he was really starting to struggle. Maybe Celtic, maybe one season with us. I mean, you talk about Roy Keane. That's box office. Zlatan come to Celtic.
Box office, definitely.
So, David, I'm going to get your thoughts on Stephen's 4 after I bring this one up from No Doran. Big Jock, Cantona, Zlatan, and Chris Sutton with steak sandwiches on the table. I'm a big fan of a steak sandwich myself. David, on Stephen's 4, what do you think of his selections? First of all, what do you think of the pot noodles?
Questionable. I mean, I decided to spend some money and get a takeaway. I think you could have shelled out for something better. But listen, everyone to their own taste. But I think I actually think you've got a very combustible table, and if there's any alcohol involved, maybe a few choice words would be said. Because Diego thinks that he's the greatest to ever play. Zlatan thinks the same. And I'm sure Di Canio has an opinion about himself as well. So I think Bertie Auld might be kind of in the background, just kind of taking it all in. But yeah, it's a good table. I think you'd have a really good time for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was going for. Definitely.
Yeah, I think that would be one that you'd maybe have to get the camera crew in just to prove that this stuff is actually going on. No, but that sounds like a fantastic dinner party. One I would actually want an invite to. I don't know about you, Dave. I'd be wanting on that invite list.
Bring your own pot noodles, boys.
Well, Liam Tennant just comes in here to say Zlatan doesn't do pot noodles.
He makes them.
He probably invented them.
Yeah, exactly.
That is definitely an interesting one. Stephen, it has been fantastic having you on today. Tell us where we can find you after this. Tell us a bit about your podcast.
So basically, My podcast is called Endless Celts Podcast. It's on Twitter under that name. You can find us on that. We've been going for a little over 6 weeks. There's 6 of us that do it. My co-host Don, he does the YouTube and Spotify side of things. He gets that up and running for me. So yeah, we're growing quite well. And Instagram, with just reached over 2,000 followers within the 6-week period, which is pretty decent. Over there, we're called Endless Celts News. So yeah, you can find us on YouTube, and again, Endless Celts Podcast. Subscribe to us. All our content, again, like you guys, is for those people who want an opinion, want to come on, vent frustrations. That's what I think these podcasts are great for. And yeah, we're going quite well. And we do appreciate you having us on. Obviously, because we're quite new, we didn't expect it so early. But I mean, I think we already have a great relationship in terms of the state of mind and the Celts podcast. So I hope that keeps going and we appear on many shows together. I think that'll be fantastic.
Yeah, and you guys were joined by Natasha Miko last night, weren't you?
Yeah, that was fantastic. Yeah, after the podcast, we got a bit of grief from a certain guy in regards to us attacking Roy Keane, but that wasn't the case. I couldn't see his comments, but she was giving them both barrels, and it was fantastic. So yeah, she was a great guest, loads of insight. We also had Russell Boyce on from State of Mind, which was fantastic. You're going to come on soon yourself, I hope.
Yep.
Same with you, David. You're invited as well.
Thanks,
We've got Declan McConville coming on Friday. You all know him from Celtic Fans TV and also appearing on State of Mind as well. So yeah, everything's looking good. We had David Webb recently, the director of football candidate for Celtic Football Club. So that was a great interview. If you want to listen to that, it's 30 minutes long. It's a great insight to what he does. But yeah, guys, we do appreciate this having us on. It's been fantastic. I was absolutely so nervous before this. I told you, so I didn't know how it was going to go. But yeah, I enjoyed the format, and thanks very much, guys.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on, Stephen. And as I said, check out the podcast at Endless Celts, and you will see some of your Celtic State of Mind favourites over there over the next few weeks. So, Stephen, it's been a pleasure having you on. We'll let you go now because we're going to do a massive preview and a massive announcement. Or you can hang around for the announcement if you want, but it is a new podcast that is launching this Friday at 2 p.m. on A State of Mind, and it is hosted by none other than Mr. Dave Claxon. Congratulations on your own podcast, Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Mel.
Congratulations, big man.
That's an unbelievable lead-in, to be honest. I feel a lot of pressure now, but listen, it's brilliant. It's brilliant to be working with a State of Mind and to be launching this podcast. So it follows on from obviously our conversation a couple of weeks ago, Colin, and the podcast is going to be called The Smart Money. It's launching this Friday, 2 p.m. UK and Irish time. It's going to be a monthly show, roughly the third Friday of each month. And it's going to focus on big ticket items in football from a business perspective. So it's going to look at stuff like World Cup bids, reforms to the game, such as the Champions League, and hopefully some interviews with some really interesting characters from the world of football with a bit of a business focus as well. So in terms of this week, we are going to be looking at Ireland and the UK's joint World Cup bid for 2030, discussing that in detail. We're also going to be looking at reforms to the Champions League. And we're also going to be looking at digital memorabilia, which has really become a hot topic. A recent video of LeBron James dunking a basketball sold for over $200,000. Yeah, wow. And maybe that's the new path for fan kind of engagement and memorabilia. And then finally, we're hoping to have a guest on from China. So it's a bit of a Colin, you're obviously joining us on Friday. So we've got Scotland, we've got Boston, and we've got China in the house. So hopefully our special guest can kind of join us. He has a background in Chinese football and kind of his own kind of focus in that area and his own fears for the game in China as well. He wrote a piece recently that was very honest about the problems in the Chinese game. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Really looking forward to it. So definitely for anyone interested in that type of thing, definitely check us out.
Yeah, I'm just going to bring up some of the comments. Charles Sweeney saying David's a nice man. He's not met you off this. I know that for a fact. Look forward to the show. Alan Duncan, sounds like it's going to be good. Looking forward to the new show. Joe Porter coming in saying sounds great. And I'm sure there'll be lots of others tuning in this Friday at 2 p.m. where you'll be joined by a sort of lower key guest with myself on Friday. I know there'll be bigger and better names joining you over the coming months, but definitely check that out. It's the Smart Money podcast. It's launching on A State of Mind this Friday at 2 p.m. We are going to wrap up here. Again, a big thank you to Stephen and to David for joining me on St Patrick's Day as we look back at some of the Irish characters linked with the Celtic job, mainly Roy Keane. Maybe he's going to be the Aberdeen manager. We'll need to check Sky Bet after this to see where his odds are sitting at. But yeah, to both of you, thank you very much for joining me, and to everyone in the comment section, thank you once again for joining me on the Football Insomniac. Next week, I'll be joined by Clyde One's Stephen Mill, and we'll take a look back at the last 7 days in the world of football. But until then, take care, stay safe,